For a long time, emotions evolved as simply a way to help in our survival. Our ancestors would communicate in silent ways about dangers that might be in the way. But as we've evolved, our idea of emotions has also evolved. And also our brain has evolved. So as we've evolved as human beings, we're also understanding a greater correlation between our emotional self and our spiritual self, and obviously our thinking self. So emotions, on biological terms, are these chemical reactions. There are these biochemical reactions that are happening when we are perceiving a certain aspect of our experience, whether it's real or imagined. So if, let's say, you are walking down the street and a car comes really fast, you react to it with fear or rage or a combination of it, right? And so what happens is your brain receives the information, your brain processes it, neural pathways get formed, and as soon as they get formed, you get a rush of this chemical into your body that you experience as emotion. Now, you can have emotional reactions even to imagined experience. So imagine you're maybe closing your eyes for a second and you imagine that you might be run over by a car. Maybe before you go to sleep, sometimes some people imagine that they're falling off and they wake up fast. And the brain thinks that is real, right? So you have a real emotional reaction, then you realize it is not real. Your brain does not know the difference. When we are very young, our emotional brain, the limbic brain, and the small reptilian brain are the more sort of evolved parts of us. And then later, as we get older, we develop our neocortex, which is our thinking, reasoning, conscious brain. So when we are very young and we are having experiences, the emotions of the experiences actually get stored much more powerfully than the actual event itself. So that's why you might have certain emotional experiences and you might not even understand why you emotionally react to certain things. It is so deeply ingrained in there, and again, that part of you is already formed. One incredible aspect of our emotions is that it really is one of the most powerful tools to connect us to the spiritual self. See, when we first come into earth, so to speak, and we choose to come into a physical body, we are a soul that has set an intention for this physical experience, and then we come into this physical experience, and then we have made a pact to play by the physical experience's laws. So there's gravity, there's thinking, there's emotion, there's sensation in our bodies, right? These are all aspects of our physical world. So emotions play an incredible role because they really not only affect how we feel, but they really impact the biology of ourselves. So one wonderful thing about emotions is that they can shift, obviously, over time. Some of those emotions can be incredible, powerful tools to help us grow, to help us experience life in a really incredible and powerful ways. And some of those negative emotions can keep us depressed, angry, and upset. Again, a lot of our emotional behavior is trained in us from when we were very young. When we come into earth, we come much more in that soul body. So we come with a great sense of higher sensory abilities. We come with a higher sense of intuition. We come with a higher sense of perceiving the world as sort of a big glob, and we are part of the big glob. As we get older, we start to see everything separate from us. And when we are young, we are the way that one of the laws of human nature, so to speak, is the mother. We come through a mother, at least so far. And so the mother, she is the carrier. She has an energy matrix in which the soul comes into. And when the soul comes into this energy matrix, it is in a way communicating with the mother's energy matrix. Part of her mother's energy matrix is obviously her emotions and her thought patterns. So if her emotions and her thought patterns are generally healthy, that is the system that the soul is coming into. And the same thing happens when the baby is born and the mother first looks at the baby. And it's not really looks, I speak of them in looks, but the look says so much. Her emotion is really in there, which is why the mother's internal state is such a powerful determinant of the baby's health and later the baby's emotional health. We come into the world with this powerful soul spirit connection to the spirit world. And then because we have come into this physical reality with its physical laws, some of its laws are thoughts and emotions. So we begin to play with that. So, for example, if we were trained in a loving environment, we learn to have a balance of our thoughts and emotions. When we have a more balanced thought emotional life, thinking and feeling life, we also tend to maintain a healthier spiritual connection, whether we are aware of it or not, correct? Because when we begin to speak about spirituality, it is sort of a touchy subject for some, because they see it as a separate thing. They don't realize that it doesn't matter if you believe in spirituality or not. It doesn't matter if you are a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim. We're all having a spiritual experience. We might call our gods by different things, but we might have different traditions and different value systems, but our spiritual experiences are all the same. We are connected to the spirit world. And so it goes the same thing with our thoughts and emotions. They're deeply influenced by the environment around us. Unfortunately, if we grew up in an abusive environment, if we grew up in an environment we do not understand a mother's true love, if she abandons us in a way, if she does not give us that full attention, and this is proven by witnessing the lives of many children who have not grown up in loving families and what that does. It's very, in a way, unfortunate, but this is part of the aspect of coming into this physical reality. And the next step, if let's say you are watching this video, you might already be there where you are seeing the powerful connections between your thoughts, your feelings, and your spiritual self. And obviously your physical self. Oftentimes the way we experience so much of that negative emotional training is because of the physical abuse that we are also exposed to, that just seems to just heighten even more the separation that we create between ourselves and our higher selves, because a big confusion sets in, right? You come into the spirit world, but then you see these humans behaving in unloving ways, and as your brain forms, you get really confused and you say, I don't get it. There's a side of me that is all loving, that I feel drawn to. Then there are these adults that are so unloving, and it's creating this confusion. Obviously, you do not have this clarity when you are that young. Your brain is simply processing and going through this information. And again, because we are in this physical reality, there are some physical laws, so to speak. And then the way that we, in a way, transcend those laws, we connect to the more universal laws. And one large aspect of the universal law is obviously that we are in a way one and connected, even though we might experience the world separately. And the way that we feel this connection is through our thoughts and emotions. Right now, there might be thoughts that we might share in common, maybe not. When we don't, there's a sense of separation that you might experience from me to you. But if, let's say, you believe in love and connection, there's a sense of unity there. We are sharing in this love and connection. So as we get older and we experience this emotional separation from our true self, we experience this emotional separation from the rest of the world, and then we end up with a series of mental emotional problems, right? So if, let's say, someone has a mental emotional problem, really what it is a misprocessing of their emotional life. They do not understand their emotions well. Not only they might not understand how their emotions, what emotions they're feeling, what the emotions mean, why the emotions are being triggered, right? If you trace any aspect of your life and any issues that you might have had, it will come down to these emotional issues, which is why people who might have incredible power processing brains, but they have emotional issues, they will have more problems in their life. So emotional intelligence is even more important than actual mental IQ intelligence. Now, of course, if you have both, you can be a powerhouse, but many times people with very high IQs will end up, let's say, working for people with lower IQs than them, because what these other people have is an emotional intelligence. So our emotional life is incredibly important. And if you are on a spiritual path, you will truly understand, if you truly are on a spiritual path, the power of your emotional health and how essential this is to truly connecting with your true being. Because your true being, your soul self, is a more vibrational match to your higher levels of emotions. So when you begin to experience those, there's a greater sense of perspective that you gain about the world. Now, this is not just a spiritual concept. It is actually proved by several studies that are made, people who experience greater joy, they laugh more, they can literally become more intelligent. They're literally not only having more fun, but because they are having more fun, biologically certain chemicals are being released in your brains. Remember, your emotions are also experiences chemical reactions in your brains, and when these happen, they allow you to open up your brain more, which is why oftentimes a spiritual experience might be recorded as ecstatic, right? A certain level of ecstasy, which is why certain chemicals, we like to take certain chemicals outside of ourselves, for example, like pills or smoking certain herbs or psychedelics, because we are truly trying to trick the brain into having these spiritual experiences. And part of why we do this, if we are intentional about it, is to get more clarity about who we are or certain aspects of our life. But it all comes down to your emotional health. You cannot really be experiencing life at a consistently spiritual level if you're a consistently angry, upset, or depressed person. Now the thing is, if you're experiencing these emotions, doesn't mean that you stop experiencing these. If in a moment you're experiencing a certain level of anger or frustration, good. That is giving you a certain level of clarity if you have the emotional intelligence to understand what it is telling you. The beauty about emotional intelligence is that it can actually develop. So if, let's say, you grew up in a more emotionally volatile home, so emotional intelligence wasn't really part of your upbringing. Unlike IQ, which can be more rigid and not as easy to change, emotional intelligence can change. And the way that we do this is by evolving our emotional state up the emotional ladder, right? Like, so you might start with complete desperation and depression, move up to anger, rage, and hope, and then joy and ecstasy and pure love. So as we move up to these higher vibrations, spiritually speaking, but also physically speaking, physics proves this, that we are vibrational beings. We all have an electromagnetic field, and when we are experiencing these higher elevated emotions, we have higher vibrations. And because we are electromagnetic fields, we are literally magnets. You are a magnet, I am a magnet. In a way, we have attracted. The reason why you are watching this video is because we have certain things vibrationally we are matched to. Maybe not everything, but certain aspects. So you are matching to certain aspects, and I'm matching to certain aspects of you. We are magnets, right? So we have attracted each other at this very moment. And so with our thoughts and emotions, we're constantly attracting the world around us. And so what these powerful emotions, what they do is they give us the opportunity to really attract consistently powerful and wonderful things for our lives that are a great match for what we want, because anything we do in life is because we want to feel a certain way. So if, let's say, you are experiencing a level of depression or anger, now if you are consistently there, unfortunately, if you're consistently staying in that place, you're consistently becoming a magnet for those lower vibrations. So you keep attracting those things in your life, so it becomes like a prophecy in a way, right? If you are sad, you keep attracting certain circumstances in your life. Now, again, it is not bad to have these negative experiences, because they're allowing you to notice certain things. For example, if you meet someone and all of a sudden you're talking to this person, you experience anger or frustration towards them. Well, it could be partially because they might have said hurtful things, or you have different viewpoints about life. But part of it is they could be triggering certain aspects of your life. But if you are there witnessing who they are, and you witness that you might have different ideas about how you see life and how they see life, and yes, in the moment they might be instigating some negative emotions. If you are emotionally healthy, you can move on quickly and understand why that was happening. But if you keep hanging on there, if you keep ruminating, and if you keep hanging on to this anger without really understanding what it did and move on, you are having an emotional issue, so to speak. It is not all bad. Again, it is a very learnable process, and it is a very practicing process. But the way that you do this is by moving up the emotional ladder. And the emotional ladder, again, is moving from the lower emotions to the higher emotions. And you begin to train yourself to do this. Again, as I mentioned, if you come from a more abusive environment like myself, this can be very tough because your brain has been programmed with so much negativity. It's been programmed, as I said, literally your limbic brain has stored now all this information in such a way that you are triggered, you don't even understand it. So if you are having emotional problems, you go around the world constantly overwhelmed by all these powerful negative emotions, or you might experience a certain level of extreme emotions like extreme mania of positivity, extreme mania of depression. So the beauty is about really finding the sweet space, or if you're going to be in a mania, at least finding a more positive mania. But if you notice that you get to swing extremely wide, then you can begin to really understand why this is happening. The first step of awareness is an important step in developing this emotional intelligence. Now, the trap is that oftentimes we might start to become observant and see ourselves and see the deep anger, rage, or depression, or regret or blame that's in there, and it becomes very overwhelming. So we want to cut off. And this is an aspect that is very huge part of a process of becoming more emotionally involved, that as you become more aware, you get so overwhelmed by everything in a way you freeze because you're witnessing these powerful emotions that have so much power over you, and it's incredibly overwhelming. So what you'd like to do is, as you are becoming aware, allow yourself to not just negate your emotions, but to experience them, and to give yourself permission to know that just because you are experiencing something, you don't have to keep ruminating that. You can begin to now move up a little bit. One simple way is to take time out of the day to quiet your mind. In a way, this is meditation. Allow yourself to be an observant of yourself. And then the next step is to start communicating with yourself. This is a great way to do this, whether out loud by recording yourself or writing down questions. But as you begin to have these negative emotions, ask yourself, begin speaking with yourself. Your subconscious is really your dedicated servant. It is there to serve you and help you. What you want to do now is get to know this part of you that is pouring forth a lot of these emotions and ask it questions. This is also a great way to develop your intuition. Why is this image coming up? Why is this coming up? How can we move it up? Also, obviously, you can do this with the help of the therapist or spiritual guidance or spiritual healer. But it is also important to understand that emotions are not just functions of thinking. Now, your thoughts affect your emotions, obviously. If you are having negative emotions, it's because your attention is somewhere negative. Your attention might be in the past, your attention might be in the future. So if you're focused on the past event, there are certain emotional aspects to that. If you're focused on a future event, there are certain emotional aspects to that as well. What you like to do is practice being in the present. As we practice being in the present, we also practice really getting to know our emotions and processing our emotions in a healthy way, and not getting caught up in a powerful, crazy current that's trying to carry us whichever way. We're sort of go with the flow, right? That sense of flow where you are focused, you're not in some hyper crazy mode, this ecstatic drug thing, though that is quite wonderful if you're naturally experiencing ecstasy. But that sense of flow is really the beautiful marriage of really understanding that there's a sense of focus, and there's a sense of wonder, and there's a sense of unknowingness, and yet there's a sense of true knowingness that you are experiencing all at once. Emotion, the word emotion itself is emotion, which is energy in motion. In Latin means movement. So it's where energy is moving. So in a way, emotion is where we put our attention to. So if, let's say, you're putting your attention to something, and this something instigates a certain emotion in you, that's where you are moving your energy to, right? So life in itself is energy in motion, and energy goes where attention goes. So emotions are the same way. Oftentimes we think that we are at the mercy of emotions. We might not even think this. We simply behave like this. You simply this thing shows up, you put the attention there. This thing shows up, you put the attention there. You have no, in a way, control, because in some ways there's so much control we can have, we can simply be. And so emotions are moving because in a way the mind, we give the power so we give the mind so much power when we say that, well, I am the mind, I think therefore I am, but it's not true. You are, you simply are, right? You don't know because you're thinking or you're feeling. So in a way, feeling is more of what you are, because that is what you are moving to now. You might say, well, it's my thoughts that bring me to places, but a thought, simply a thought, has no power to it unless it has emotion. The brain tends to record events that had a powerful emotional discharge much more powerfully than just an event that didn't really mean much to you. You might have had thoughts, you have plenty of thoughts, but your brain records the thoughts that have a powerful emotional attachment to. That's why you often speak to people and they'll say, well, I am thinking and I think this, or that's what opinions are. They're charged thoughts. It doesn't mean that they are right or wrong. When truth shows up, truth doesn't have an emotional charge. It doesn't really, is not really a prey to your emotions, which is why understanding our emotions is so wonderful. And part of reaching a spiritual alignment in a way is we want to come into communion with truth. Truth is beyond your physical reality. It is part of your physical reality, but is beyond it. So if, let's say, our physical reality is our thoughts and emotions, energy and motion, and our bodies. So if you're constantly at this way of your emotions, you're constantly going this way and that way, well, that would just get exhausting, right? Imagine a ship and it's all the winds are going this way, that way, especially if your emotions are all over the place. Well, at some point the ship would just get destroyed. It's the same way, which is why we want to find a healthy balance of emotions and have a good understanding of our emotions and a good grip on them. Because part of how emotions are processed are in the brain. And we must understand that we are not the brain. The brain is part of us, but we are not the brain. We just keep identifying ourselves with our emotions and our thoughts so much that we become addicted to them, right? We become addicted to the physical aspect of us, which are thoughts, emotions, and our physical body. The reason why we reach for spiritual experience, no matter what religion you are, is because we understand intuitively that there's a greater part of us that is not so codependent on all these physical aspects and all the thoughts and emotions. And a spiritual experience is also not about being a cut off person or a blasé person. It's just understanding what that mental emotional balance is that helps you experience the life and the world more fully. And we all have this nugget, we all have this in us. In some ways, the pineal gland is described as this part of us where we have this sort of nugget of pure shining gold, diamond. Every precious commodity on earth can be in a way summed up in this part of the human brain that in a way connects us to the greater truth of the universe, which we try to, this part of us also releases something called DMT. And this is where in a way the greater truth of the universe and how the world works is. But you don't have to obviously wait till you die or be born again to experience this level, or you don't even have to consume the drug itself. Is when we find and we understand that our emotions and our thoughts are part of our physical body, and to learn to in a way prime ourselves so that we can transcend that to truly experience the higher levels of our spiritual self.